Hello and welcome to an album analysis. In today's video we're going to be reviewing the brand new album Jackpot Juicer by the Sacramento-based rock band Dance Gavin Dance. It certainly has been a bit of a challenge for the band getting to this point. They've certainly been thrown through the blender over the past 2 years. First with the COVID pandemic putting a massive delay on their Afterburner tour, pushing constant dates back. Then we also had the death of bassist Tim Feerick, and finally the sexual misconduct allegations placed against Tillian Pearson and his temporary, possibly permanent removal from the band. Despite all the obstacles blocking their path, the band really have managed to put together a fantastic album. It certainly serves as a beautiful swan song for Tim Feerick, as it will be his last contribution to the band, and they've certainly kind of put together one brilliant last hurrah for him. The album is actually quite a behemoth, coming in at 18 tracks with a runtime of 63 minutes, the longest of any Dance Gavin Dance album. Despite this, they've managed to avoid some of the pitfalls that some albums do run into when they do include so many tracks. You often find filler tracks in various albums of this length. Despite that, Dance Gavin Dance have managed to avoid this pitfall and certainly put together an album that will feature all the things that people love and expect from their previous albums, while also putting a new spin and giving a new taste to the newer fans and giving them an idea of what to expect. The album does also feature some guest appearances from the likes of Rob Diamani of Don Brocco, providing the vocals for the first song that was released as a single in the form of Synergy. We do also see some guest appearances in the guitar role as well, featuring Martin Bianchi of Secret Band, Louis Baltazar of Wolf and Bear, and also Zachary Green of Strawberry Girls. One other thing to note as well before we do go through it track by track is how well this album puts every single member in the spotlight. There is no dominating presence, despite each member having their notable signature appearing on the album, from Will Swan's crazy guitar riffs to Tillian and John's incredible vocals, with Tim and Matt also providing the grooves that we know them so well for. It is also the first album to actually feature Andrew Wells as a permanent member. He has been touring with them since around 2015, but this album would mark his first appearance as a permanent member, and he certainly does make his presence known. Many of the tracks on this album do actually have very catchy choruses. You'll often find yourself singing along to most of these tracks even after just the first playthrough. As well as the singles that we have heard so far, I can guarantee you that many of the tracks that we didn't get to hear beforehand will have you doing the exact same thing, from tapping your toes to just kind of bobbing your head, or even just dancing and singing along at the top of your lungs. With that being said, let's take a peek at it track by track. The album does actually open with a string piece called Untitled 2, which is actually a bit of a throwback to their debut album, which was Downtown Battle Mountain. Straight away we are introduced to a melody or two before we head into the first main track, titled Cream of the Crop, just one of the many singles we did get to hear as a bit of a teaser before the actual release of the album. Within moments of this first real track, we are thrown straight in at the deep end. Straight away we've got Will Swan's crazy guitar riffs and Tillian's vocals repeating "Hey you," making sure that we are ready, we are alert, and we are strapped in for the ride. This track does also help kind of set the scene for the things we can expect to see in the rest of the album going forward. Constant change paces, very groovy rhythms that really kind of add to that element of that kind of dancey sound that we do expect from them, and the ability to kind of drag people along and kind of get them involved. Moving on, then we do head into Synergy, the song that gave us the introduction to the Rat King saga. If you have been following along with some of the videos they have been releasing, which if you haven't seen them already, I would highly recommend doing so. They're just so much fun, as most Dance Gavin Dance music videos do tend to be. It really was a song that was stuck in my head and had me repeating the chorus over and over the first time that I did hear it. Track number 4, Holy Ghost Spirit, gives us a first real good foray into the use of the dual guitars. Also has a very deliberate pace change as well. That's something that they love to do throughout this album, is constantly up and down the pace at a moment's notice, at the drop of a hat, kind of leaving you never knowing what to expect next. Then moving into For the G's, and this track certainly caught me off guard. It's the first track that really gives us the introduction into Andrew Wells providing his vocals, and he certainly, as I say, makes his presence known on this track. It really was a welcome addition, something that I think fans will absolutely love his contributions on. So this is definitely one track you really want to keep your ears pinned back for, and definitely pay attention to this particular track with its extremely groovy intro, something that's made itself more prevalent on this particular album compared to previous releases. Then on the track Ember, we really get to see Tim and Matt go to work. Matt unleashing his double bass pedal, just proving the prowess that he has behind the drum kit, and Tim providing some really slick bass lines that, although they're prevalent throughout the entire album, really make themselves known on this particular track. Then we've got the second track released from the album as a single, which was Pop Off, and John Mess certainly does pop off in this particular track. He really does show that he is superior, also continuing the Rat King saga that we did have across the course of the music videos, and he really kind of shines through on this particular track, shouting and screaming the actual title of the track numerous times, kind of blending it in with Tillian's beautiful kind of harmonised vocals as well. Really does make it for a kind of very pounding, very energetic but sharp kind of song that can sometimes kind of help break up the kind of groovy rhythms that we're used to, rather than kind of putting them all into one place on the album. Then we've got One Man's Cringe, which I felt was actually the strongest vocal track on this, featuring all three of them really working in contingency together. Mess opening with Don't Listen to Acceptance speeches. Then we go into Tillian and Andrew really bouncing off one another, showing that they've integrated having that extra vocalist extremely well, really kind of bouncing the power around between the three of them and not letting one take sole control, which really does kind of help with a lot of harmonies that they did blend into this album. You haven't got one overpowering vocalist kind of drowning the others out. Heading into the middle of the album, we do actually have a couple of what I felt were the weaker tracks, not necessarily as fillers, but certainly don't live up to the same power, energy levels that most of the rest of the album does. These two tracks are actually Feels Bad Man and Two Secret Weapons. They're actually a couple of songs apart, but they do have Die Another Day sandwiched right in between, which I'm glad they're kind of not sandwiched together, or it kind of slightly ruined that middle section. By it means they are certainly not bad tracks, but just not quite the same polished quality as the rest of the album. Die Another Day, though, is definitely one of the tracks we do need to talk about. I always love when Tillian kind of reaches into the darker elements, the harsher side of his vocals. It just really shows the prowess of his range, being able to hit those high notes, but also throw in the occasional scream, and it's something we've come to expect more and more of him, and it is a very welcome addition to their repertoire of skills and little tricks that they've got up their sleeve, especially towards the end of the song when he's screaming Kill the King, again adding to this Rat King saga about trying to bring it all to an end. And I just really enjoyed this track, more so just purely based off of Tillian's performance in the track itself. He really does make it one of the standouts on this album. I'm not going to say too much about Two Secret Weapons. It's definitely one of the songs that I really felt was lacking and just didn't kind of pull together all too well. But after that, we do have Polka Dot Dobbins, which is a song that really kind of has the kind of upbeat kind of stylized vocals, but we also do get the very heavy contrast with John Mess's screams as well, and they kind of almost this push and pull, this kind of tug of war effectively between the two vocalists, which is something I really like on a lot of their songs. Just that complete sharp contrast and how it can just turn at the drop of a hat. All of a sudden you can be going from something almost lullaby-like to something that has got your attention like an alarm clock. After a mixed middle section of the album, we're starting to head towards the latter stages now, where we do have Long Nights in Jail, a track that starts to see the tempo really starting to pick up again. And despite that, I do actually enjoy some of the slower paced tracks they do have. I like that it shows a lot of variety, and if it was 18 tracks of just pure adrenaline high tempo music, it would all kind of get a bit too samey. So I do like the contrast that they do have, showing off a lot of their skills in faster and slower songs. The next two songs actually add to the band's ability to show that contrast. We've got Back on Deck as well as Current Events. Back on Deck actually features probably some of the highest notes I think Tillian has probably ever managed to hit. Then from going on from that, when we head into Current Events, it is probably more on the heavier side for those of you that are DGD fans that really like to hear their super heavy stuff. Then we've got Pray to God for Your Mother, which is another track you really want to put attention into. It's probably the grooviest track on this particular album, and I really kind of wish it was released as a single. It is really good. Probably one of my personal favourites just from having that first listen through, although I can see it possibly chopping and changing as I listen to this album more and more, because there are so many brilliant tracks on it, and each track showcases something different. As a long time Dance Gavin Dance fan, I can kind of draw elements from different albums with different tracks on on this album, so it really does make it hard to pin them down as to which is your favourite, but this is definitely one you really want to pay attention to, the use of their collective sound, and it'll definitely give you a chorus that you'll have you singing along to non-stop. Even the outro songs to this album are extremely well thought through. First we've got Swallowed by Eternity, which again puts Pearson at the prominent spot, and he's the best person for the job for doing the outro for this album. Certainly his softer vocals provide a much kind of nicer ending to the album as opposed to John's kind of harsher vocals. And Have a Nice Life also very neatly kind of rounds the album out, just brings it to again a soft close. We've kind of had that opening violin intro with Untitled 2, and now we're just ending it again with a nice little soft song just to kind of round out, almost as like a message from the band, just kind of almost kind of telling you to go out and have a nice life. Again, in contrast to the start of the album when we did have the cream of the crop intro shouting "Hey you," they're getting your attention, and now they've kind of told you all their stories, all their messages, and they're kind of telling you to move on to your next thing and go and enjoy yourself. So just to bring everything to conclusion, this is definitely an album that all DGD fans want to get themselves listening to. Not only once, not twice, just keep playing it through because it definitely deserves the credit. I'd probably rate it around an 8.5, maybe pushing towards a 9. Only that middle section that does slightly let it down with a couple of tracks that just didn't have that same kind of togetherness that most of the album did. But considering that this album has 18 tracks, it's hard to kind of argue we're getting so much value for our money, so many great tracks packed into this, that it really would be a shame to kind of pull it down too far just because a couple of songs didn't kind of quite fit the bill. That's everything for today's video, but please do let me know your thoughts on the album in the comments below. Let me know what your favourite song is. Mine is certainly going to be Pray to God for Your Mother. I just really love that track, and definitely this is going to be an album I think that does stand the test of time in the DGD discography. Hope you've enjoyed today's video, and I will see you in the next album analysis.